Finally, let's talk about the peripheral route of persuasion. Individuals who travel down the peripheral route are usually more swayed by the superficial characteristics of a message. In fact, there is very little analysis or no analysis at all that the individual is making about the actual merits of the arguments made within the message. They are more swayed by things like the color of the car, or the shape of the car, or the way that the presenter looks, like our friend Sarah was, as opposed to looking at the things like the safety features and the gas mileage that Julie was paying more attention to in the example that we've been following throughout this lecture. The recipients of messages who tend to travel a peripheral route follow a simple rule of thumb as to whether they are going to accept a message or reject it. So they kind of just go with a gut check in reality. And so they look to things like whether or not they like the speaker, whether the advertisement or the persuasive message has a catchy slogan, whether there is a celebrity endorsement, those sorts of things. In addition, they're looking at things like the attractiveness of the message and the quality of the presentation. If all of these more superficial elements are present, and if the recipient of the message likes these elements, then they're likely to be persuaded by the message. So ultimately, there are 6 different appeals that happen on the peripheral route that messages can use to try and pull people who don't want to highly elaborate on a message into that persuasive message. And these include reciprocation, consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity. Reciprocation happens when the speaker implies that they have done the listener a favor by informing them about their idea, so they should just accept the message in return. This makes it easy for the listener of a message to say, okay, yeah, you put a lot of hard work into this message, so I'm just going to go ahead and accept it on face value. If we're looking to a consistency appeal, this happens when the speaker says that their methods are just the way that it's done, and therefore that's how we should continue to do it in the future. It's kind of an if it ain't broke, don't fix it argument, which you may recognize as a fallacy. Next is social proof. This happens when the speaker claims that everyone is buying the product, so you should too. A lot of different products use the social proof appeal because they make arguments like it's the #1 selling acne brand or the #1 selling brand of makeup or whatever the product is. They'll say everyone else is buying it, so you should too. And you may recognize this as a bandwagon appeal from our fallacies lecture. Next is liking. This happens when the speaker convinces the listener that the product or idea is likable. So therefore, that the listener should like it. Pretty simple. The next appeal is authority. This happens when the speaker is an expert or someone of influence. And this happens all the time with celebrity endorsements especially. If you look at the advertisement on the right, this is a picture of Hayden Panettiere on a Got Milk advertisement. And the Got Milk advertisements were famous for using celebrity endorsements to encourage people to drink more milk. They're essentially saying, hey, Hayden drinks milk, you should too. And a lot of different products use celebrity endorsements as a false authority in order to get people to buy their products. A message might also appeal to authority by demonstrating a person in a white lab coat and claiming that they are a doctor and having them say smart things so that you buy their message. There's lots of different ways to appeal to authority. And then finally, messages might appeal to scarcity. Scarcity involves some kind of limited time offer or a limited supply. And you might have seen the scarcity appeal in action when you're shopping online. For example, if you're on Amazon or Etsy, you might see a message when you put something in your cart that there are only 3 of these items left, so you should go ahead and buy this item. Because if you don't buy it right now, it might not be there later. And this appeal really works on people because if they are interested in potentially buying something, the fact that there is very little of something left might be enough to push that individual over the edge and hit the purchase button. So these 6 cues can signal that the creator of this message is trying to appeal to the peripheral route of persuasion in order to get people who want to take the easy way to take the action that they want them to take. And in fact, most television and radio advertisements, and probably a lot of advertisements on the internet as well, appeal to the peripheral route because they know that people probably won't highly engage with the message itself, and so they try to make it as easy on the listener as possible to want to engage in this message. However, appealing to the peripheral route has much shorter-term effects than appealing to the central route does. When an individual processes a message on the peripheral route, it produces a much more weak and temporary change. So in our example with Julie and Sarah from before, Julie and Sarah may both buy the car, but Sarah, because she processed the information on the peripheral route, is ultimately probably going to end up a lot less satisfied with her investment in that car than Julie was, because Julie did the research and knew all of the ins and outs and all of the features of the car and knew exactly what she was getting into, whereas Sarah just liked the fact that it was a red car or a green car or whatever it was that she was persuaded by. So the peripheral route produces a much more weak and temporary change, but if you are someone who's just trying to sell a product in the moment, that might be enough, and so the peripheral route might be the way to go for you. Ultimately, when it comes to the elaboration likelihood model, we know that the recipient can choose whether they process a message via the central route or the peripheral route. And as a result, a lot of messages include information that would sway both of those listeners. So they include information that might get the person who wants to process on the central route to buy the product, but they might also include those elements for the person who wants to process peripherally. So ultimately, it's a good idea to recognize which route it is you are tempted to take when listening to a message so that you can understand just what kind of change it is that you're going for.